Finally here with our first integral podcast with our new initiative, Founders Battlefield. This is a great initiative that we as a collective have come together to be able to showcase stories for founders who have gone through the trenches, but also unfiltered conversations around blood, sweat, and tears, what we've all gone through. But also occasionally we have significant triumphs. And these journeys that we face are never documented. I think it's the right opportunity, and we believe it's the right time to start giving courage to the next generation of founders who need these stories. And with me today, I have founders from multiple sectors who have stepped up, and we call them the men in the arena. They're going to introduce themselves shortly. And it's the people who step up and are willing to be counted to share their story for the next generation of entrepreneurs who need to know this story. One of the founders is somebody in creative industry. He's going to introduce himself, a great friend of mine, living his next phase of life. He always tells me when he hit 50, which I'm about to hit 50, told me, Mike, when you hit 50, the next day you'll know, the next week you'll have the feeling. So I'm still waiting to hear the feeling. I feel the feeling in the next 2 weeks. He's in the creative industry. He'll tell us how trust affects, how trust and the creative industries come together. The next founder is a great friend of mine who is in the fintech industry. Again, the fintech industry, you understand, the lending business is also a trust business. So it's very interesting to get to know from him as he introduces himself. And the next founder is also in the health business, in the health provision and the medical services business, which, as you know, has significant trust issues. And I come from a technology environment and also a medtech business, which also, as you realize, technology is fundamentally becoming important, sort of build trust within the ecosystem. Without further ado, I'm going to sort of have the teams introduce themselves, the founders. Very proud to have them here, the men in the arena and the women in the arena. And they will spend time introducing themselves, explaining how this trust deficit how it affects their business, and how, as an individual, as entrepreneurs, how they've had to deal with it. So welcome to the show, Kevin, Roy, and Renee. Nice to have you guys.
Thank you.
Guys, the founders, the first initial founders, so very proud of you. Yeah. I think we give you platinum stars. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
So maybe we could start with ladies first. Renee?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and thank you for having me on the show. It's great to be here with the other gladiators in the ring, I think is what we are, yes. Because every day is a brand new fight and a new enemy sometimes. And even when you do have those moments of conquest, you know that tomorrow you start from scratch and you start with kind of a new battle in front of you. So I'm a co-founder in the medical credit business, which is a very new aspect of this spectrum of healthcare. And of course, as you mentioned, my name is Renee Ngamau, and I am co-founder at CheckUps Medical. And what we do is we provide, under a product called CheckUps Cover, medical credit. The problem that we're trying to solve is the problem of delaying healthcare because of lack of finances. So we all know today that, Mike, if someone in your family does not have the money to go to see the doctor, they will start with a kind of group that they have listed, and your name will be the first one, and in brackets will be 20,000 shillings, and there'll be a call saying or a text saying, please send us the confirmation of the payment. And until all of the money comes in, then care is delayed. The problem with care being delayed, of course, is that delayed care means worse outcomes later on when you are looking for healthcare. And how did we arrive here? We arrived here by having given the gambit of the health services and then noticing that people were going away and were saying, can you fill like one day of the prescription? I'll be right back. At that level of the pyramid, the proverbial pyramid, where it's working class farmers, factory workers, and at that level. And it's also at that level where, because prescriptions are being filled, and I'm just talking now about the technicality, and I'll link it to low trust, because prescriptions are being filled one day at a time, then the cost of medication is exponentially higher. The unit cost of medication is exponentially higher because this is a person who is not buying in bulk 7 days worth of prescription or 3 days worth of prescription. They're buying a day's worth of prescription. And where invariably there is a question about the authenticity of the medication that they are being sold, whether in fact it does pass muster. And right there, we've started with the question of trust in healthcare. And it goes beyond that. It goes into the system of healthcare delivery. What are we paying for? Who is paying for it? Why do we pay differently if we have an insurance card than when we do not? And what is the quality of the care? What happens when care goes rogue? And there's an attempt to correct that. And how can we trust our healthcare professionals to be honest when it went wrong? And allow that there is a corrective measure and a compensation measure. And I'm just talking basic healthcare here. And this is not necessarily a Kenyan problem, but it certainly is, from the surveys that we have done and the research that has been done, an African problem and a third or a developing nation problem. And then I want to tie in the question of trust within institutions, which may be even greater than just healthcare. The question of trust with employees and the challenge of being able to get and maintain good quality professionals. Because we've managed to erode the belief and the trust that existed with employees who could start at the bottom of their career as newbies and trust that they would be able to climb within their organizations and grow within those organizations. And because that no longer exists, then we see these very fluid and very transactional employment or contracts where, they could be in or not. They could show up on the day that they're supposed to or not. It's bare minimum in order to get paid. And on the other hand, the employer might just be paying, bare minimum in order to get the service that they need. And there's no room inside of that for growth. And I haven't even started having the conversation about what trust looks like as an entrepreneur, trying to grow a business in an environment that is constantly shifting from a regulatory point of view, where the rules are not clear on the ground, but where the cost of being, particularly in healthcare, is very, very high in terms of investment, and where the returns are a lot slower, and happily so, because a slower return should just cool down a healthcare, which instead of doing that, it exacerbates the need for quick cash, quick returns, high returns, very short period of time, and therefore pushes the quality of care to become a transactional issue. So Renee, I can paint so many places.
Renee, on that
yes,
point, I think Renee is already taking us down that depth in conversation. We'll come to it, Renee.
I think I came ready.
I see the passion of Renee. And we're going to come to that conversation in more depth. And one thing she's touched on, which is going to be a topic we're going to touch later, is what we call the capital mafia. What do you mean by capital mafia? Part of what you've mentioned right now is saying investors want quick return. So yeah, you have an investor who comes to your business. They want to exit 5 years. But surely, in a healthcare business, how do you exit in 5 years? It has to be a long-term view. So it's a topic we're going to touch later in one of the episodes around what we call the capital mafia. Assuming that you don't get money, anybody who invests money in you definitely wants quickest return. So they're not your friends. We're going to talk about that in one of the episodes. But we're going to go down to much more conversation, Renee, in the next phase of the conversation. But let's go to Kevin.
Well, I love the idea of man in the arena. It should be player in the arena to include, to be gender sensitive. So I've been an entrepreneur for nearly 20 years now. I'm currently running the fastest growing startup. It's known as OA Platform Solutions. We started by focusing on the problem, which was the boda driver did not have access to insurance that was relevant to them. We then embedded it in a purchase that they make every day for fuel. And we've basically grown into a one-stop shop for boda drivers. So they're able to get insurance, loans, lubricant, helmets, reflector jackets. We've had massive impact. We've distributed over 5,000 helmets, over 10,000 reflector jackets. We have a loan product where they are able to get a full tank so that they don't have to go, bodas put piecemeal, 60 bob, 100 bob, 60 bob. So now we're able to give them a full tank. And then there's a loyalty point system. So we've grown that business in the last 3 years. In fact, it was our birthday, February 24th, our third birthday. So that now means we potentially now make it to 100 years. If you look at probability. In terms of trust, I think when I looked at trust for this conversation, I looked at trust from my customer's point of view, from the supplier or the business's point of view, and then of course the general society. My customer is not trusted. Right, the boda driver is a pariah in Kenyan society to many people. Yet that same boda driver is a guy who drops your kids to school, carries all your sensitive documents from one place to another, and delivers your food. So there's a conversation there that we've been having with the boda driver where we're trying to ensure that they have dignity. So we have this program we're running called Maisha ni Kujituma, right? Which is basically reminding people that the only reason you make money is you have to get out wake up in the morning and start hustling. Na ni kujituma, to send yourself.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And you know who told us that? Our boda drivers. We'd ask them, how come you start your day at 4? He says, Maisha ni kujituma. If I don't start at 4, then I don't make money.
Amazing.
Right? So we're trying to reframe the way the public perceives bodas. Despite the challenges, I keep reminding them, those are men, they have families, they have kids, and they are very important to society. The second, of course, is the suppliers. We have suppliers who will pay us late. That's low trust, because when you pay me late, it means I pay salaries late. It means I pay my own suppliers late. We have investors, right, reneging on contracts. That's a big issue, obviously. That has affected operations once or twice in our 3-year journey. We've had, just the general. We are going to do this deal. Then the contract takes 9 months, and this is a large corporate, and you're wondering, are you guys slow? Are you guys incompetent? Are you not interested? But the lack of communications tells us a lot about how you behave and how your institution, is sort of the culture of that institution. It's a low trust culture. Right? Do you even want a bribe? Sometimes we're even wondering, is it that you want us to pay you so that this process moves faster? Right? So there's a huge problem there. And then I think the biggest problem in Kenya generally is our society is actually a low trust society. You don't trust your watchman, you don't trust your house help, you don't trust your sister, you don't trust your mother. Right? Why? Because we've built this very man-eat-man, short-termist approach to everything, right? So if somebody dies in the family, suddenly we are fighting because we want a piece of the land that dad left. In that time, we all grew up together. We all grew up in the same house. We all went on holidays together. You're wondering, how are we fighting as siblings? But I think that's a short-termist view. And so my take on this is actually quite philosophical. I'm inspired by a tribe from the Red Indian. Is that kosher anymore to say?
Native American.
Native Americans.
Native American, yes.
Yeah. And that's part of the learning journey, right? So Native American tribe known as the Iroquois. And they have this thing called the 7th generation principle. So every time the chiefs would meet to make a decision for their village or their society, they would ask themselves, who am I representing 7 generations from now? And how does the decision I make now as a person who represents those people 7 generations from now impact them, right? And you find that when you start thinking that long term, you start making your decisions slightly different. And there's trust, because I need to trust that the other person is also making the decision based using that same framing, so that our objective is long-term, not short-term. And until we solve that in Kenyan society, I don't think we're going to go really far. And we'll have to sort of start building these communities of entrepreneurs. Like in America, like the conversation we had that day was about the Jewish people in America.
Yes.
Right? How they built that community.
But we'll come to that.
Yes, of course.
Because at some point, Kevin will have to come and figure out why our society today, Kenya, operates the way it is. Is it a Kenyan issue? Is it an Africa issue?
Yes.
Is it yet we are a highly religious society?
Yes.
What's the issue, right?
Yes.
But we'll come to that, right?
My point is that we now have to start creating these micro ecosystems within
100%.
society to build this sort of high trust ecosystem so that we can save our society, for lack of a better word.
And I like the examples you're giving. So you need to give us more examples like that. I like the Indian approach and the conversation around that. It's great.
Native American.
Native American. So, and also the Jewish thing you told me the other day about that how the comradeship was very interesting. I went to do a research and also realized in another venture I am in, some of my investors in that realm are very supportive. So I found it quite interesting, but we'll come to that.
Yeah.
Roy,
Yes.
creative industry. Tell us. First, let's understand creative industry. When you talk about creative, what's creative? Even me, until I met you, and definitely I met others, creative was a very broad word, creative. But you've given me good insights about the creative industry. So over to you, and great to have you here.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I like the founders battlefield. I'm very happy that I'm one of the platinum pioneers, and I'm waiting for those stars.
You'll get it.
And it's actually quite interesting to be here and also to be amongst my fellow battlefield warriors. It's also intimidating to speak after them because now you keep changing your conversation in your head, by the way.
Worry.
So the speech I had at the beginning is gone. Okay. So my name is Gitahi, and I'm the founder of a company called Art at Work Limited. We are an ecosystem builder for the creative sector, focusing in 5 primary areas, which were driven by need. One of the things that we look at is if a dancer or a comedian walked into a bank and asked for a loan, what do you think the answer to that would be?
Hell no.
Oh, hell no, exactly. But the thing is, you realize that unlike us, when we were growing up, we're told become a doctor, lawyer, an engineer, pilot, those kind of things. It's like it was on the back of the birth certificate. This is what you need to tell them. This generation is now growing up wanting to become content creators, bloggers, vloggers, footballers, and those kind of things. The question then becomes, what are we going to do with that generation? And when you then talk about banks, you then start asking, how will they be able to grow their businesses without the participation of financial institutions? So the first thing that we did was to now start looking at financial inclusion. How do we create products that will be, that creatives can now have in financial institutions? Of course, that's where now trust comes in, because what is the perception that we have of creatives, all right? And starting from society, when parents are introducing their kids in church, what do they say? Yes, this is Kevin. He's a financial expert. That is Mike. He's an engineer. Wacha turuke huyo. Then go to the last born, by the way, who's and you ask, why did they ruka that person? And it's because that's the creative in the family. Anatuibiaga wakati kuna sherehe and vitu kama hizo. But you need to move them. You can get for them a job in Nairobi if you actually get that opportunity. Then we forget that those people making those introductions are the CEOs of companies that will be dealing with creatives, people who are in government who will be dealing with those particular creatives. If that's their attitude there, do you think they will pay much attention in boardrooms or in policy decisions when they're talking about creatives? There's an issue that is there. We then now started talking about education. And the reason for that is because when you say that you've been accepted for law, engineering, finance or something, your parents are willing to sell a cow, land, buildings, and that kind of thing. But when you say DJ, what's the thing that's going to be sold by those parents? Because the thing is, they do not trust that creative, those creative subjects. And so we realized that because of that trust, then we have to look at a whole ecosystem of how do we build that particular trust, from financial inclusion, education, technology, the use of technology, so that we can now begin to start automating certain processes and creating repetition for the same. Policy and legislation, what is guiding that policy? What's that framework that's going to be used? And also markets. How do we ensure that whatever you have as a skill actually now gives you reward and is monetized for the same? So when you talk about trust, for me, it's an extreme sport. Because the thing is, it's an extreme sport. Because the thing is, 1 minute you walk in and somebody says creatives, and then you realize that even in my mother tongue, Kikuyu, what do you call an artist? It's a mushori. What do you also call a swindler, a crook? A mushori.
Oh, wow.
So the thing is, at the end of the day, this one, there's already low trust by how we define creatives, and we have to change that particular perception. And that's what I do on a daily basis.
Coming to the next conversation, in my own experiences, having built a significant one of the largest technology businesses in East Africa, and I've been building other businesses and now helping companies, some founders, through a journey, this whole trust thing is becoming significantly one of the common things we deal with. And that trust cuts across multiple dimensions. It cuts across what Kevin said, your investors, who people invest in you. It cuts across your payer, who is your customer, who doesn't commit, who says one thing, doesn't do it. It cuts across what you do based on that commitment not being given to you, what happens downstream to the people you've committed to. It cuts across the people who are vested in your business, could be bankers, could be financial institutions, or could be in whatever, could even be even employees are so intertwined in terms of what you do. And my personal experience in terms of trust is quite, I would say for many people, that have been significantly traumatic, right? It is having a very extremely great run as a business for 25 years, building 20 years, the first 20 years, building massive business, 300-400 employees, of maybe even 700 people that have walked through our company as in the shoes of what we've built as a company I was building called 76 Technologies. A lot of people I meet in the streets would tell me, Mike, I used to work with you. We started my career with you from school. I meet them in big corporates. Most of them have become entrepreneurs, which is great. But as we moved on that journey, it's where you start thinking, the more and more you get bigger projects, you move from one institution, right? You move to the next institution. You become a synonym, a name that everybody knows in terms of projects. What happens? One day, you sign an 800-page contract, which you think, okay, contracts are great contracts, right? And you think contracts are going to be able to safeguard you even in a trust environment. And what I found, even those contracts, it's going to be another conversation, we're going to talk about the justice lines. Do contracts really mean anything when trust is missing? Do contracts mean anything at the end of the day? So one of the conversation is also trying to figure out what happened to us, despite having signed very elaborate 900-page contracts. A government bureaucrat wakes up one morning and cancels a contract with no reason and for their own interest, whatever it was. And it got me thinking for a very long time, why would anybody do this? What is their motivation? We have had insignificant value to the country. It's a project today they're trying to implement many years later. Would have managed to have implemented this project 8 years ago. It's a project that was going to catapult our business to become a public company. When you know what the stock exchange is, significantly deeply, with a lot of companies exiting. It's a project that would have cross-reference in many other markets in Africa. So in my mind, I was like a bit shocked, like, why can't they see what I see? Then I realized also that your lens is your lens and your success is your success. Sometimes it's not a collective conversation. Why? You succeeding is not us succeeding. So again, it's a very individualistic approach that we need to understand. That also brings the issue of trust. So from our point of view, who did I trust? Did I trust the contract? And by signing that contract, 800 pages, sitting there and making sure there are seals, you endorse it, did it mean anything? So it got me extremely jaded in terms of contracts that I sign. I asked myself, does this contract mean anything, really? Because today you sign it, does it mean anything? Eventually you'll go to court. You'll go and you'll sit yourself within the next 4 or 5 years in a court system, of which even finally when you get awarded a court award, they won't even pay anyways. So why again do business? So at the end of the day, I ask myself, do even contracts mean anything? Does enforcement mean anything? At the end of the day, are there communities that are doing contracts or are working as founders amongst yourselves or ecosystems where there is high trust that is not contract driven? That's something we're going to talk about. Because when I finally came to realize that, as I moved along, you realize that you sign contracts in good faith. You don't necessarily sign them with the basis that somebody's going to break them, right? And then I also realized even furthermore that some of the bigger brands that I worked with, some of them, I realized that it is in a whim that your contract gets cancelled. Think about today, if you're a USAID, you're working for USAID. Today you don't have a contract, right? Whether or not it's great you have a contract or not, it's an issue of trust. Maybe you sign knowing one day the contract will never get cancelled. But today it's cancelled. You deal and you move. So the issue of trust then starts getting eroded across your ecosystem because you give commitments. You give commitments to banks. You give commitments to employees. You give commitments to shareholders. Then that whole trust deficit now from the initial part of your business starts crumbling across the whole ecosystem. It can even easily go to your family. Because then they say, okay, you're the crazy guy who went to do this project. Nobody realizes that you did it because everything looked great, legit. Right? So for my case, and I think speaking from having healed from this whole journey, it's one of those moments, trust, it breaks your heart, right? And then it makes you, what kind of person do you become post that? True. Do you become vengeful? Do you become bitter? Do you become pessimistic? So I think eventually happens post-healing, and that's why I encourage a lot of entrepreneurs to talk about some of these things. The journey moving forward, if you don't become abundant in mentality, that can hold you, that whole experience can hold you and you can't move forward.
I'm just going to give a little bit of pushback there.
Sure.
Okay? Because, Mike, you are a seasoned entrepreneur. I mean, they're kind of almost putting on my legal hat and also my business hat. There's a couple of red flags that can be seen in the aftermath of the story, okay? But what verification could you have done at the point when you were signing, which you did not do then, given the knowledge and information that you had then, and even what you have experienced now? What could you have done differently?
What I think I should have done, I should have insured myself against political risk.
That's true.
Yeah. So I'd not thought through that.
Okay, so
political risk should have been, and that's why you have insurance. And I would tell many entrepreneurs, when you sign big contracts with, especially with public institutions or anyone, you have to sign political risk. Political risk could be change of government, change of leadership,
that's true,
or even political destruction. And there are companies that, the trade institutions in the world, their work is to guard you against that capability. I'm a Kenyan organization, so I didn't have a trade. If I was a British company, I would have gone to my British trade office, and they would have leveraged using the political organization. So as a Kenyan company, in a Kenyan context, operating in the Kenyan ecosystem, so I was basically alone in the ecosystem. Trust me. It is you and yourself. But maybe by insuring my risk, that should have maybe safeguarded me from this whole ecosystem or from this challenge. That's how I would have, if doing this again, I would have done that.
So you'd have added political, you'd have bought political.
100%. Even if it cost me 5% more on the contract, I should have done that.
And that's the cost of trust, isn't it, to an extent?
It is the cost of trust, yes.
That now you have to factor in an extra 5% that your competitor does not need to if they have been registered or they are owned separately, because the environment and the context and the route from which they're coming has a higher leverage on trust. So like you said, if you are a British-based company or, I don't know, I'm just picking that from the example that you've given, then you don't have to go through this 5%, we're going to use 5%, or the political risk insurance policy, because you are covered by virtue of the society that you come from.
100%.
And I think it was what you were alluding to, Kevin, which is that there are communities, societies, structures where when you come from them, there is an assumption
Yes.
of a level of trust
Yes.
that does not exist everywhere else. So as we're sitting here, I think, what have we called ourselves? Players in the arena, gladiators in the field, warriors on the course.
Yeah, we're in the streets. We're in the battlefield.
We're in the battlefield.
Yes.
What other arenas or those who enter into our same battlefield come in with an armor that we ourselves do not have by virtue of
100%.
ourselves. And that's the issue here around the question of low trust as I see it. When I look at, I mean, your story and, you know, what you've mentioned even with your customers, what you're talking about with creatives, when I look at what goes on in our industry, there is a presumption that you are a high-risk business by virtue of where you are registered, who is leading it, where that person comes from, literally, in my case, the anatomy of my person is a questioning issue, even though consistently the World Bank and other institutions have proven that women will pay back 94 to 96% of loans taken by women will be repaid, as opposed to between 47% to 64% by men. We will still be asked for extra collateral, be paid lower, be given smaller amounts of money because of our anatomy. And that anatomy is further complicates the fact that we're sitting on top of the low trust environment that you are in. And so I think when we discuss the question of low trust, there's something around the definition of identity
100%.
that we disavow, and that we have agreed to it, that it's okay that the value of a business like Seven Seas Technology, or, you know, a business that's dealing with bodas, or, you know, heaven forbid, with creatives, that it should, if it emanates from this environment, be downgraded. Because I assure you that if you are in another country, in a first world country, and even in some developing nations, and you are creative, the fact of your script will raise you the money for you to be able to shoot the film, just the script alone. But here, not so.
Yes.
So maybe there's a
Yes.
question of identity here.
Well, I see it differently, slightly differently, because the thing is, as pioneers, there's no precedence. There's no precedence in what has been done before. Mike had no way of knowing that when this 800-page contract, where they would not protect him from political risk. But now that it has happened, the next guy who's going to sign a contract will include that, because there's a precedence that has been set by a pioneer who has gone before. One of the things
But I think the experience that we've gone through, being one of the pioneers or one of the largest technology companies, has significant negative connotation to the industry. So there are very few entrepreneurs today who are willing to take risk, the kind of risk I was taking in this industry.
that is true.
In my industry, at least.
But we don't learn from our mistakes. You see, the thing is like, for example, and this is an example that I gave you, if you stop looking at many people who have gone before us from a negative perspective, because I was still remembering what you said about how some people would not be invited to boards because of what it is that they have done before. If you remove that negative connotation and look at the characteristics of that particular person, you realize that those are the characteristics that are needed to build enterprises in this particular market. But the thing is, once you go into that particular battlefield, you get wounded, your name is soiled, and other things now come and soil the reputation that you have, that enabled you now to go get a facility, join a board, and those kind of things. Now, when that happens, it's the saints who have not gotten into the battlefield, who have not built those particular businesses, that are getting more prominence than the people who've actually dared to try do new things. So my question then becomes, where's the place of innovation? All right? How are we innovating? If we are killing the very people who are innovating, and we are now happy with the standard managers, where's the space for that innovation?
And maybe that brings Kevin, because when Kevin told me, first I met recently, we had catching up with Kevin. Kevin told me, Mike, this is my second business. And my first business, and I still, the emotion in which you talked about it, in a very normal day, in a normal setup, the way you explained how you went through that process, it was 5 minutes conversation that has a lot of impact, right? And I'd love Kevin to sort of speak to what happened.
In fact, I wanted to jump in and add to Roy's point of innovation, because I was a huge fan, still am, of Mike, Macharia, because of 7Cs. We had a similar mentor, Mr. Gashui,
Yes.
the chairman. And when I hear your story now that somebody woke up in the morning on a whim and canceled your contract, I'm like, man, right? Do people understand the consequences that happened after that? Like, that one singular decision, 400 employees, an entrepreneur's equity, investors' equity and debt, the future, meaning how many other entrepreneurs will now dare to enter the arena, right? This one human being, because of being short-termist, right, without understanding the consequences, has literally, created this set of consequences that are negative to the entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? My experience, for example, is lending. So I'm a lender, been lending all my life. I've actually been an investor and a lender, so I've always allocated capital. So there are three sort of principles in allocating capital. You've got the who are you giving the money to, so KYC, and then ability to repay, so do cash flows align to show repayment. And then we have this beautiful thing we call willingness to repay, which is basically like a trust barometer we use in lending to see, has this person ever borrowed somewhere else and repaid? Right? Now, I'll tell you a story. 2018, I'm sitting I was actually with my friends at a party. It's midnight on a Saturday. I look at my dashboard because now we're tech entrepreneurs. We build dashboards for ourselves so that as CEO, I have always sight of everything. I see we're lending volumes that we've never done. In fact, I'm like, yo, this is going to be a good month. I'm swimming. Monday morning, we enter the office and my CTO, a guy called Zach, is looking at me a little bit worried. And I ask him, what's wrong? He says, did you see the volume on Saturday night? I say, yeah, I saw the volume. It was about, in total, we lent about 18 million that weekend. I say, yes, I did. And he says, I think it was all fraud. Wow. So I ask him, what do you mean? He says, I think we've looked at the system and we're seeing there was a duplication of accounts. So somebody had figured out how to reverse engineer our algorithm to determine the highest limit based on the data you fed. So these guys had basically figured out how to hit the system at midnight when no one was really, looking deeply right into the system and hit us. Then I start calling around, and turns out all of us were hit that weekend. So in that year, 2018, our ecosystem, digital lending, lost 30 billion shillings to fraud. Right? So just so that you understand how low trust this society is, there are a bunch of guys who were sitting down, analyzing digital lending apps, their algorithms, reverse engineering them, right? Wow. And then executing. And when I reflect about it, I'm like, these are some of the most innovative people, obviously.
100%.
Of course.
Who are these people who sat in a room, put these resources together, had the technical know-how to reverse engineer algorithms, had the technical know-how to enter the system and then disburse money? Where are these guys? Why are they not entrepreneurs in the white market? Right? It's because of that one foolish decision that somebody switched off, cancelled a contract, right? That took away opportunity. And you see, and that's my point, right? Low trust societies take away opportunities from intelligent people, right? And it wasn't just you. How many businesses have woken up and found a contract has been cancelled because one person's ego, one person's short-sightedness, decided, I don't like Mike Macharia's face, so let me cancel the contract. And so you take away opportunity. So I think the real cost to low trust is opportunity. So these 1 million kids who graduate from high school every year, do you know it's 1 million kids? 1 million new guys are graduating, come into the workforce. And then 7Cs now can no longer absorb the 100 guys a month, right? Renee can't absorb 100 people a month. I can't absorb 100 people. You can't. So where are they going? We've taken away opportunity, right? And then we've scared away entrepreneurs. So we have this low trust issue is actually a crisis. I think if we could call it a pandemic, endemic, I think that's what it should be called. So that's my story, right?
Wow.
Woke up one morning, thought you're doing well, then you realize, damn, you've lost everything.
Yeah. But you see, the pain, when you say that, it brings so much memories. How many people you had to wake up one morning and figure out, do I fire these guys? What do I do with these guys? I convinced guys to leave their jobs in Europe to come here and work for me. Now I'm looking at them trying to figure out where I tell them to go.
Yeah, go where?
I've convinced global entrepreneurs or funders, big corporates in Japan to invest in my business. Believe it or not, the sovereign fund of Japan was going to be an investor in my business. No other African company that want to do that. So you can imagine, at the point when you're having a conversation with the sovereign funds, and one decision like that happens, what impact it has had to other entrepreneurs who are, because think about, what would the Japanese think?
Yeah.
They think this is just a place where there's chaos.
Look at this.
But they don't realize that, right?
Yeah.
They also don't realize that you're champions. You go to, you're in events globally, whether it's when Obama was there, whoever, you're representing the country flag, not realizing building this over 20 years takes a lot of time, right? In terms of trust. Where do you think we have trust deficit in the healthcare between you guys delivering healthcare, the payers, the consumer? Where is that trust lost? And how do you think we can repair that?
First of all, if you've got to sign 800 pages of anything, there is low trust at the door.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because if you've got to legislate every single item, it means I don't trust you. If I trust you, I will shake hands, a hug, remind me who your mother is so that I know where to find you, and that's it. We're in business and we're off. We've got to define 800 pages worth of delivery.
There's a problem.
Then there's the question is not even, before we get to this person who cancelled it, the drafters of that piece of that contract.
Your battery of lies.
Operated in a very low trust environment. That's why you've got to crystallize every possible occurrence that you can consider. What are high trust environments? It's a handshake, it's a table, it's this month I'm the one going with the money, and we have that because we know we have that as chamas. The men's chamas, the women's chamas, what do we come together on the basis of? We come together on the basis of, I know you, you know me, we went to high school together, whatever the nexus is. And then we put money on the table, whatever numbers that money is, and then either it goes to one person or it goes towards a project. So it's not like we don't have pockets where that happens. Are those pockets significant enough to be able to raise the funds that are needed by CheckUps, by 7Cs technology, by an entire industry of creatives who should be churning out what is ours called Riverwood? We should be churning out, the films, the songs, the stars that our Buddhas should not only be trusted. I'm just back from Rwanda, and having, for the first time ever, taken a border, because I would not do so in Kenya. I do have.
No, we have
children.
great borders. I'll introduce you to some of the
Like
best
this,
in
yes,
Kenya.
I
You'll
will.
get a helmet.
That's great.
They've got a nice bike.
I think, and that would be great. And I think that's also the point, that what I noticed is everyone had to wear a helmet.
Yes.
And had to wear a reflector.
Indeed.
And that the rider had them for you. And we couldn't ride what is it, 2 pillion, or, like two on the back of the...
It's 1 pillion passenger.
It's 1 pillion
Yeah, so
passenger,
two
and
on
that
the
is
bike
the
maximum.
that is the law. Whereas here, it's me, the kid, my backpack, which is a separate story. But leading all to the rules, the regulations, the structure, and the underlying presumptions and principles that create either a high level of trust or a low level of trust. So let's bring it around to the healthcare industry. What is the problem that is attempting to be fixed right now in all of the changes to the healthcare industry? I'm actually asking that as a question to you, gentlemen. What problem is the new legislation trying to fix that existed before?
It didn't cover it only, so the way I understood it, and tell me if I'm wrong, is NHIF covered employed and people who paid into the program. And then, so Taifa Care now is trying to cover the whole nation. So all 60 million of us should now be on cover. And the idea is that because I earn more, I carry the weight.
More risk.
More, I pay more into it because
More weighted.
we are a family. The Harambee spirit.
Yeah.
That's the way I understood it.
Yeah. And that's and so it's sitting, and I love the way you've explained it. It's sitting on a presumption of a system, a cultural system, and a community system of Harambee. That I am because we are because I am. Is that a system, or is that a presumption that exists today in today's society?
I think it's a presumption.
But does it exist? Can we say across the board that today you can travel across Kenya and you could stop somewhere and ask for help, ask for water, ask for shelter, and it would be granted to you as it was before by virtue of you having shown up and being Kenyan?
To be honest, I don't even know if I'd ask for those things to somebody I don't know. Because
Because
I fear.
you fear them.
Yeah.
So we've created a system, and I want to draw back to the principles, the basis of which we are placing a system. We're placing a system of trust on a bedrock of, I wouldn't even ask.
Yeah, sure.
Do you see that it is designed not to work at the door?
That's true.
Amen.
Because if that presumption continues to exist, that I've been to societies in West Africa where they will tell me, because their ethnic group largely crosses the border right the way from Ghana to Burkina Faso, that if you show up and you are a person from a certain clan, then at the bare minimum you can sleep in the
that
backyard,
place, yeah.
or there'll be a room by virtue of you having shown up and said, I am so and so from this and that clan. And that is why they're able to do such cross-border trade with a lot more ease than we are.
Interesting.
You move from wherever your home is and your people. In fact, don't even move far. Just go down the road. Think about the road to the next estate, the next, whatever, the next county.
Kenya has become you don't even know if you can go to your sister's house.
And
let's
on
be
the
honest.
basis of that, we have created a healthcare system. A healthcare system that has been rocked in the past with scandal that we have never addressed. A healthcare system that has been eroded by way of trust with things like vaccines that we were not very sure about, that were never addressed. And now on top of that, we now say to you, gentlemen, to myself, and to other entrepreneurs, take X amount of percentage more out, pay it, in the hope that somebody over there will gain access to healthcare that they did not access before. But you cannot see a nexus between what you've paid and a budgetary allocation for the building of new clinics, equipping of new medics, even hiring of new medics.
So it's interesting. So why is it broken? Let's look at insights. If we then ask ourselves, where did the rain start hitting us? Right? Rain on us. Like, for instance, we're highly religious. Every other corner is a church or some worship or mosque, whatever it is. That's number one, right? So every weekend, every Saturday, every Sunday, let's go. Our politicians are in charge, day in, day out. Number two, you observe our political realm or our political class. One day we are together, one day we are not, one day we don't like each other, one day we like each other. We're not even sure at what point. There's a high level of disillusionment. Who is doing what? One day we're enemies, one day we're friends. We don't know anymore. Number three, our own societies, our own individualism from our homesteads. You live with your daughter or son, and you leave the house, and you're the first person to bribe the cop. Okay? Or naturally today we've got phones, right? You're definitely on phone telling somebody, don't worry, that one will deal with him. So the children are listening to what you're saying on phone, and they can see what you're trying to do in how you live. Then we go to school. I'm not sure if we still are trained in ethics in our conversation. I'm not even sure, because we're talking about the law ethics. I'm not even sure where we are with that. So the question is, all these things are happening in our ecosystem. So where is it coming together? When do you think, where will the glue come to move us into a high trust? Because when you go to the first world, yes, as you can imagine, those, as a matter of religion is not something they're even caring too much about, right? It's a whole different ecosystem there. So what do you think is a glue that will sort of get us back into that pathway? Or what do you think, where is the structure broken? And where do you think would be the starting point towards healing us? Because we're here sort of to drive hope for the next generation. Is that correct? You're not telling, I'm not trying to tell anybody not to start a business. I think you should start. I think the first journey is for us being honest.
Yes.
Being honest. And I think we need to start by being honest, having this conversation, right?
I think Renee brought out a very interesting point about culture. And for me, I'm in the creative cultural industry. And you're right. But I wouldn't dismiss culture in totality. It would be now more of an issue of class. Because down at the base of the pyramid, they still trust. The minute you walk into a particular place, you'll find that decent courtesy will mean that if your car breaks down in the middle of Katangi, for example, I was there a few weeks ago, people will be actually coming out to help you. It breaks down in Nairobi, you're not too sure who's coming, whether they're coming to assist or they're coming to do forced change of ownership of certain things. Yeah? And so I remember saying this, that our economics or our business is actually based on our social construct, all right? Business follows a societal structure. Like, for example, in the West, you'd find where people are more individualistic, you'll find that you'd have businesses that address the individual as a person. In Africa, we're a community, and that's why M-Pesa succeeded, because of what? The fact that you have this thing of, like, Kevin is going to Nyeri. I tell him, hey, Kevin, he's a G, 2 Gs, take it to Made to basically buy medicine for the cow and that kind of thing. Now, M-Pesa came and replaced and automated that particular process where it's not Kevin I'm sending, but it's M-Pesa that I'm sending, right? And so that it has worked well here. But if you look at how it has succeeded in other societal constructs, it hasn't, all right? So business follows that. Now, when it comes to trust issues, we don't seem to trust that people are doing what needs to be done. A long time ago, we had people who used to think about the next generation. My dad found me planting a tree one time, and he asked me, that shadow, the shade of that tree, who does it belong to? I didn't understand it then. Now I understand that he was not asking about what the shade was about. It was about my kids. They're the ones who are going to enjoy that particular shade. And that has also changed the way I see things. But in trust, and when I speak about the creative space, we have ambitions. Every parent wants their child to succeed. But the question then becomes, do I trust your career choices to be able to get you to succeed? As a lawyer, as a doctor, as an engineer, parents trust that you may have a good job. But as a DJ, as a dancer, as an acrobat, they don't trust that that will actually get you to where it is that you actually need to get to be. I also find that even in families today, there's that whole thing of, in the event that you transition to the afterlife, who would you rather leave your kids with, a friend or your family? And that's a question that people now are beginning to ask, and you find more and more it's becoming the family, a friend, all right? It's becoming a friend. Why? Yet, we claim that we love our children and we leave them with their house help, all right? Our most prized possession, yet how do we treat our house helps, or how much do we pay them? Yet we trust they will not do something wrong to the most prized possession that we have. So I find we're juggling between a change of how society used to be, or how we remember things, and how things are actually panning out.
You know, you mentioned earlier, just trying to regroup, you said that there are elements within, you could be in a low trust ecosystem as a founder, the business you're doing. But then there's another layer of people who are in the same industry as you, who have developed what you call a trust levels among themselves. So, you could be in a distribution ecosystem. Even you could be in the bar business, alcohol, whatever, which is a very low trust business. But there's another group of people there. They don't have purchase orders. They don't have LCs. They don't have, they call you, just deliver for me this. Deliver for me this. That ecosystem of communities that are able to play in that segment, they'll always compete against you, and they'll always win against you because they have a high level of trust. Is it a religious issue? Is it a community issue that makes those guys come together? I'd like you to speak to that, especially around what, in a low trust, how do some of the groupings, some of the guys who come and compete against you, how do they group together to compete, okay? And remove everybody else from the market? Alternatively, you have so much capital and you can wait it out for 10 years. Let's assume the pharmaceutical industry. You run pharmacies. Today you're seeing consolidation of pharmacies. Anyone with capital is buying up all the other pharmacies. Then you've got all these other pharmacies. You're in the medical industry. There's all this, those guys, how is their supply chain compared to this guy who is buying everybody else, right? Because they've got lots of capital. How is that industry going to play out eventually? Because I think it's a low trust ecosystem.
So I'll attempt to answer that, and I want to sort of give a bit of context. So in 2020, COVID came. I remember March 13th, 2020 with a clarity most people probably don't, because Uhuru and Dr. Patrick Njoroge basically, to protect Kenyans, told the digital lenders, or passed a regulation that digital lenders could no longer submit data into the credit bureau, which essentially meant that customers could stop paying us, right? And that actually was the death knell for that first business that Mike is talking about. Now, I took a 6-month sabbatical because I was tired, I was emotionally drained, but I wanted to reflect on the journey so far and ask myself, okay, so what's the next step? And it was during that sabbatical that I came up with, I started asking this question around trust especially, and how other markets had developed these high trust ecosystems that then eventually became very successful. So I'll give you an example. Have you guys heard of the Patels of the US?
Yes.
They own 80% of the motels, those motels.
I mean,
Yeah, and the way they did that is one Patel back in the 80s basically figured out that if I give any Patel who wants to start a motel, I will give them a loan at a certain interest rate. And because I know how to reach them, because they are Patels like me,
Okay.
I will catch them if they don't repay.
Because you have a loop back effect.
Yeah, there's a loop back effect, right? And so it has ended up in 2025, 21st, now 80% of all motels are owned by one community in the US. And something like that really fascinated me. And it hit me that you actually have to be the change you want to see, right? So that's when I sort of came up with this purpose of my own life, which, my goal is to ensure that Africa is the most modern place by 2050. And then the way I was going to do that was I was going to build businesses that were going to big businesses that propel society forward. Because when I then analyzed the more successful markets, and I had also the advantage of having traveled around the world, I had seen that big business, whether you like it or not, plays a very fundamental role in ensuring high trust societies are built. So if you go to Korea, you've got the Chaebols. If you go to Japan, you've got the Mitsumi, the Sushos, Toyotas, the Mitsumis, etc. If you go to the US, you've got... So when you start looking at it from that lens, it's like, what is missing here in Kenya? What is missing here in Africa? And what was missing very obviously was that the large big businesses in Africa were not African owned, right? So you know, Coca-Cola is a large business in Kenya, but it isn't owned by a Kenyan, right? So why do they have no reason to want to reinvest in Kenya per se? They want to return the profits back home to the US, where they are building those societies. Anyway, so my take on this whole what do we need to do for society now is we have to be the examples. We have to start showing people how long-term high trust is an advantage to you. And I now make it a case that I only now work with high trust people. So I have another business where my favorite client or my best client, and we've done a lot, will call me in the morning and say, hey, Kevin, we've got this set of challenges we need to solve for the next quarter. It only came because just like Mike, they have a government-related part of their business, and so sometimes these things come from nowhere. And he says, we need to solve. And then I'll say, hey, we need X amount of money just to start mobilizing. And even before we've signed the contracts, the guy has sent the money. Right? So the only thing we do to receive the money is we have to then send the proper accounting so that we send a proper invoice and whatnot, because they are real business. So the other big example is the association. So we've got the digital lenders who came together to form an association known as the Digital Financial Services Association of Kenya. And they made me chairman in 2020. Now, why is this relevant? My industry, or digital lending industry, lends about 20 billion shillings a month to 8 million Kenyans. So we are a huge part of the economy. But we had real existential issues. And we've got companies from the US, India, Europe, China, all in our industry. And we actually came together, sat around a table. In fact, it was in this very room, this very room. And we sort of said, hey guys, if we don't solve regulation, if we don't solve trust, tax, and we don't solve consumer protection, because what was digital lending known for? Harassing customers. None of us are going to be in business. So we have to work together now, to solve these issues. So 2019, we had almost 10,000 complaints a month about harassment. Today, we have few tens. So you only get tens of complaints. Why? Because we came together, collectively formed a customer complaint portal, and every law we lobbied for, Data Protection Act and the CBK Amendment Act, we made sure that there was a minimum standard of consumer protection so that all of us as businesses had to abide to that law, right? When it came to tax, again, we came together. The budget was huge, right? It was almost 15 million shillings, so we all had to contribute as an industry, because that's what I'm trying to demonstrate. We all came together, put so the smaller ones put 100K, the big ones put 2 million. But we came together, hired a consultant, had a multi-pronged approach to attack this tax issue. Today, our tax issue is solved. We used to pay 20% of tax on our full income, right? So all our income used to pay an excise tax on that. The banks and the SACCOs didn't, and we were arguing that that's discriminatory. In 2024, we were able to convince Treasury and the relevant authorities, stakeholders, that's discriminatory. So today we only pay 20% on our fee income. Again, that is a collaborative effort. And then the third thing now is regulations, right? We used to say, look at how you killed the payments guys. Look at how you killed the microfinance institutions. Don't do that to us. We're lending to 8 million Kenyans. The banks don't lend to these guys. The SACCOs don't lend to these guys. We are the ones who lend to them. So what you don't want is you don't want us to lend to not be in existence, right? And so we've worked very closely with the central bank as well, right, to come up with a regulation that is not cumbersome, has a fixed timeline. Now, have we been able to maintain those timelines? No, but we're getting better. Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we've got to start walking the talk.
Let's be a little candid. We said about unfiltered conversations. What we are beginning to find is the political class are beginning to jump into our business. They're becoming the business people.
The business, yeah.
In my industry, I would almost say there's a lot of political players who have taken up positions to be in our industry as technology players, importers, whatever you want to do, integrators, kila pahali, they're everywhere. So how do you create a high trust environment when the guys who are meant to be legislating you on the other side also want to be part of the game?
But the law allows them to. Okay. So unless you change the law, you're not going to deal with that issue. So what we've done is that if you're a politician and you're in the game, but you abide to our high trust principles, then you can be one of us. And there are some who are. In fact, we don't just have Kenyan politicians. We have other politicians from across the,
so you've accepted,
the region.
You've said, okay, we cannot change the tide. What we'll do, we'll sail with it.
Yeah.
And allow everybody, whether a politician or not, to play, but so long as they abide with the rules.
Yes, so
But how does the consumer know that I'm going to a business that is ethical and high trust, and then how does the consumer know where to go? Come to your business and not go to this business.
I think the solution has already been provided with what Kevin is saying.
This is in fintech.
The biggest problem that we have across industries is the fact that the rules apply differently to different people. Okay, to some people the law applies, to others the law does not apply. Okay, and so it creates that unfairness of the environment. But I found here is that we have got too much of human intervention along that particular value chain. The elimination of human beings, by the way, and the moving towards technology, where you automate certain processes and they're not dependent on people, then you now begin to increase the trust levels, because you know that whether I work with you or Renee or Kevin, the standards are the same. But in a field where the standards have not been established, then you find that I will work with you depending on the kind of relationship that I have with you. If she doesn't like me, then definitely we are not going to go, she's not going to take forward an idea that would have benefited many Kenyans, but because of the relationship that we have with her. The association is the way to go. We have very many things that are dependent on people. And that's why you find that in this country, every election resets businesses, because depending on who is coming in, comes in with their cronies, whatever progress was being made is either stopped, eliminated, and a new process comes in, because now people are thinking it's my turn to eat. Look at some of the processes that have been going on in the counties. Some processes were beautiful, all right, like in Kiambu. All right, we're not supposed to mention names, but we'll say something like Kiambu, where you used to come from one particular office. This guy inputs your information, and a receipt is printed at the cash office. You go pay at the cash office, and then your permissions are now coming from that particular office. It was automated. Immediately that administration left. Now somebody else comes and says, this is now my system.
And that brings me to, and I'm going to go to Renee on a very interesting question. You know, you've touched on, remember you talked about 30 topics. The first topic talked about today's trust. And it has given birth to 3 other topics. Where business and politics meet, you've seen. It's going to be a very interesting intersection. the issue of justice lines. You know, the justice system, does it work for others? Does it not work for others? That's going to be one of the topics we're going to be talking about, which is going to be very interesting. And then the power of networks. When networks work for you, and when networks don't work for you. Those are all topics that are coming up. It's almost like the lay of the land. We have realized one thing gives birth to the next. But the question to Renee is, and for me, our business, all the businesses I've been in have either been funded by angels, funded by VC, and funded by private equity. The angels all my other businesses, whether it's my Ponea business, are global angels. People all the way from the US, or people all the way from India or South Africa, right? So it's always a conversation. I have to explain to them my heritage from 7 Seas. It's like if you don't explain that, nobody's investing. So you first start with a negative backfooting for them, first of all, to invest in your business. It's a very challenging, but I realized the more clear you are in terms of where, what happened, and how you got there, the more they're able to trust you to move on. Which is why I think honesty and being able to share our story is very, very important. Number two is I figured out that if you're in a low trust industry, Renee, you guys know, you're in a healthcare, it's low trust. Kwisha, right? So you have two options. You specialize in your areas of capability as a medical provider, or you go into mass market and you're trying to figure out how you're going to survive, okay? Now, how do you convince investors who may not understand this conversation of low trust? Because it's not something you put in your investment memorandum.
So first of all, at the door, I've learned to explain myself.
Okay.
Because, like you said, it's the bleeding elephant in the room. So rather than pussyfoot around it or pretend that it's not happening, just address it at the door. At least I found that when I do, then it forestalls other questions.
Scenario.
And I get that from, I do a lot of work. I do a time tithe. So I know a lot of people do kind of tithe by way of money. I also tithe my time. And I tithe my
That's
time.
interesting, tithe time.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do a tithe time.
I've learned something new again. Do you tithe time?
I give time for free, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's the most valuable asset
is.
we all have.
Is that
Yes.
what we're doing right
Yes,
now?
it is.
Yes.
And thanks for you guys coming.
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you. This time silent,
It has
right?
been pushed to take.
Great, okay.
And my time tithe is with an organization for formerly imprisoned women.
Okay.
Having recognized that 86% of the women who go to prison in Kenya go to prison for less than a year for petty, poverty-related, non-violent crimes, selling outside the designated zone, selling without a license, hawking, loitering, changa, brewing. All of them were looking for money.
Wow.
And because they go in for such a short period of time, and the prison system starts training skills at month 6, and yet they go in for 1 month in 1,000 shillings or 1 month imprisonment. In order to break that cycle, we have to have a very strong intervention. And one of the things is when they come out, they have to explain, where have you been for the month? Why do you only have the dress on your back? That just doesn't sound right. And so what we train them, which I've trained in return, is tell the story up front. Then there's no power in it. I was caught for, my tomatoes were confiscated by Kanjo. They were worth 300 shillings. The magistrate fined me 1,000 shillings or 1 month imprisonment. I didn't have 1,000 shillings. I went in for a month. The end. Now we can move.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
it's not sitting over here kind of festering, should I ask the question, should I not? But I think there's something to what you're asking, which is a pity, and I'm quite sure that you must have it within your 30 shows, which is what you said. All of my angel investors come from, and you named all of these other places other than home.
That was something.
India, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, pretty much all of the Asian tigers have taught us that you cannot grow indefinitely with external money.
That's true.
Money must be raised in homes, in home countries. And so and I do know that there are some initiatives towards this, but I would even kind of like challenge Kevin that the next level of the business of digital lending must be those $1 million ticket ticket sizes to businesses for them to be able to grow so that your business can exist in 100 years. Because if your business in 100 years is lending 20, 50, 5,000, 100,000, I'm sorry, but the industry will have failed.
I agree.
Because where is that
100%.
next level of transition in 100 years? So what does that then look like? How do we move here amongst ourselves in the coalition of the willing and the arena of the warriors to raise the 10 million US that you need for your next venture? At least 5 of it is coming from home because it does not have foreign exchange risk. It understands political risk. It understands if you have to pivot suddenly because there's been a change in policy, regulation, or law, or even a judgment that has come out that has completely reshaped what is going on the ground. Local money understands, in the case of healthcare, for example, that if the President of the United States, by the stroke of a pen, cancels the greatest investment in healthcare, leaving HIV and tuberculosis naked and afraid because ARVs are no longer going to get there and ARVs are a daily need, then immediately we all know that healthcare is going to need to find that from somewhere. Pharmaceuticals are going to we're going to need to procure that medication and to deliver it, maybe not for free, but at a price or in a way that is consumable, which tells you what? Immediately, I need money. And I need a lot of it to plug a hole. I need a system. Where will I look? If I must look back to the country whose president has just cancelled
It's a mess.
the very contract and the financing, then we can know that I will not get that money at the speed at which I need it. But who is going to die? His people aren't going to die
It's us.
from lack of ARVs. It's your aunt and my uncle and your cousin, and dare I say, it's ourselves and our children when we look at the incident of HIV.
I'm so glad you brought that up because the thing is, we are having the same problem in the creative sector. Because the thing is, I actually wrote to the person in charge of the creative sector and said, with Trump stopping aid, it means that for an industry like ours that is also run by grants, we now need to start attracting private sector capital to ensure that those particular promises that or the expectations that this is one sector that will facilitate the creation of jobs, income opportunities, and even revenue for government. And I actually wish this conversation was actually live with some audiences listening to it because, honestly speaking, we have this thing where the typical government official is not a long-term thinker, unfortunately. Because even when you talk about what the new chair of KRA was trying to propose, that we shouldn't have our budgets annually because it does not allow companies to actually plan around what that tax regime is. And I thought, yeah, that's true. If you ask a government official, where are you expecting tax revenue from 3 years from now? They actually don't know. What are those sectors that we're investing in that will actually give a return on tax revenue 3 years from now? Nobody seems to know. We basically wake up in the morning and go like, what are we going to tax? Tobacco, sin tax, and whatever, and things that are actually destroying businesses rather than building them. Okay, which then becomes a big issue. I love what you're saying. But the thing is, who will convene that if not government?
It cannot be government.
It cannot be government.
Let me
Yes,
just
it
say,
can't
it
be government.
can't
be government.
It never
Yeah.
was.
It never will be.
It never
will be.
It never will be.
We
Exactly.
need to accept that.
In
Yes.
fact, to what I wanted to add is the reason the government, the civil servant, because that's what they are, civil servant, the bureaucracy, is not thinking about the tax revenue in 3 years, is because that's not their problem, right? Whose problem is it if an industry survives or dies? It's us, the ones in the arena. Therefore, we have to take leadership. And that's why my solution was we need to be the ones to lead from the
100%,
front.
yes.
I loved what Renee said. In fact, Renee has said, there's a pandemic, there's a crisis right now, real 100,000 people are about to die or are in the process of dying, who is one shouting from the mountaintops that this is a crisis that's happening, and two, who is going to start putting the different pieces together pro bono, because it's a long-term thing, because you can't start asking for your pay now.
Exactly.
Put the people in the room that matter, and then now say, hey, guys, now we need a plan, right? And so I'm challenging us, I'm challenging our viewers, I'm challenging the entrepreneurs, and Kenyans especially. This Serikali's idea, there's a Messiah coming. Yesterday or somewhere somebody was telling me we can't wait for the Gen Z leader. All that crap, let's stop it, right? What are you doing? What are you doing today? How are you helping or solving the problems, helping solve for the problems that you see in your society? And how are you enacting high trust principles in all the decisions you make? Right? That is the solution.
Well said.
Right? It is us. We have to start by doing it ourselves.
As if we have this content at a public, definitely it's going to be a global content, there must be somebody who's thinking, really, I think I need to move, right? What you've said could inspire the next guy to make that move. So I hope in terms of what our sharing in terms of Funders Battlefield is eventually to be that place where sometimes you're disillusioned. You can just go and realize, really, you're not the only person thinking about this. You could just ignite that passion in somebody who is sort of at the brink of, do I do, don't I? What I do. Do people think I'm crazy? Don't people think I'm crazy? Maybe, Renee, your conversation today is going to inspire the next guy who's about to quit their job and say, hey, I'm going to quit. I'm going to do this. So I'm very happy that you guys came here, because you're lighting the fire for the next set of entrepreneurs or the founders who have just been sort of second-guessing themselves. Do I do, don't I?
Don't I?
What I do. So over to you. Thank you for that.
I dare say this, and I draw this lesson again from these amazing women that I work with who, so broken and so broke, have no choices, and therefore they have to create their own environment. I dare say this, there is no next generation. There isn't another one.
That's true.
There isn't. It's us. It's us. You've asked the question, who should convene this? I'm waiting for your 3 names. I'm waiting for yours. I'm going to come and I'm going to call the 4, and I'm waiting for yours so that we solve this one. Because if you look throughout history, whether it is the stories of the rises of the families, such as the proverbial Rothschilds, or it is the rebuilding of Germany after 2 world wars, 2 devastating wars.
Devastating.
If you look at
everything gone.
Japan.
It is Japan. Or even, let's not go far. Let's fly 1 hour due west. Rwanda.
Rwanda, yeah.
It has never been some people who are coming. It has never been another generation. It has never even been the most skilled people who had the greatest technical whatnot went to. It was always the coalition of the willing who refused to die on their knees. And I think very strongly that's what we need to do. I've just come from this probably time date this, but I've come from the Africa Health Agenda conference. Literally earlier on this week. And the conversation was, what do we do now that the money is no longer there? Let me just add something so that you understand the immediacy of this crisis. It's not just the stroke of the pen from one country. It is that Europe has, across different countries, stated that they're removing between 15 to 25% of the allocation to healthcare that goes towards us, and it's moving into military.
Defense.
Because they're looking at what is in front of them directly today.
100%.
So that tells you that this isn't a short term. We're not waiting, please, Lord, just let them vote the next guy in and then we'll be back in business. No. Commander. Menda. That one is gone. Which means that we must find the solutions today. And the solutions cannot even include the kind of thinking that brought us thus far. We need someone in agriculture in this conversation, because we need to know what foods
are going to be high nutrition value for these people so that they can be able. We need someone who is dealing with the environment so that we understand our upper respiratory diseases. How are we going to deal with them in an environment that reduces the amount of pollution? I'm giving you this from a healthcare point of view, and I'm breaking it down in this way to suggest that the kind of thinking that we need to do has got to be this kind of thinking. We need to think, if this message, what was very successful in the 1990s in HIV, it was that we pushed a whole load of messaging
It was.
everywhere. Billboards, posters, in schools, in local language. We did family trees of who had slept with whom, who was married to whom, and how HIV passed on until we got that generation who was in school then, that you can die from something we called ukimwi. So what do we need now? It's not creatives are no longer a nice to have. Our messaging goes through radio and through visuals. That's how we learn even today. That's how we disseminate information. So that's what we need, but we need it today. What is that coalition of the willing? It is those who, maybe like us here, maybe I'm being too spiritual about it, but I believe everything happens twice.
You have a
in
topic on
spirit and then in truth.
spirituality, by
This
the way.
is very, very good. I will be back. But on a light note. But I believe that if this is our calling, if that thing that you see, that you mentioned is your purpose, that 100 years from now, in a time when you will not exist, that there will be some kind of financials that will have raised people. If you believe that this is your calling, Mike, if you believe that this is your calling, and the person who is watching today, if you believe that this is your calling, then immediately the convening needs to happen now, because the dying is not happening then. And I speak about dying in healthcare. Let's discuss what's happening when youth do not have employment. Let's discuss the amounts of suicides and addictions that are going out from unemployment and underemployment. But in Kenya, what do we tell ourselves? Kenyans, we drink a lot. Which is the overlay for the subtext of we are frustrated, depressed, and dependent. But when we see ourselves as what we truly are, then we have a chance to define for ourselves who we want to be. I'm not waiting for my kids cannot come to rescue me. I will have failed as a parent.
That's true.
I have Gen Zs in my house. Their job is to get from me some values that can help them go into a world that I have no business existing in. But in order for them to have that, they must see in their mother a level of courage and a level of empathy and vulnerability and faith that was insane, so that their world can be sane.
Yes.
Wow.
Amen.
Fantastic.
Well said.
And that's amen.
Well
Amen.
said.
You know, and then
Amen to that.
we this is the passion that we need to drive, and the hope that we have to drive for other founders and entrepreneurs out there. It's not about it's all gone, because remember, being an entrepreneur and a founder in this ecosystem is a life challenge. You understand? It's not easy. Yeah. Pending bills, hapo zimefika, I don't know where. This is it. This is, you ask yourself, like, where you go here, KRA there on your case. Ask yourself, like, what do I do here? Taxi mengia. Kila kitu is, you wake up in the morning, or even sleep. You know, we had a very big conversation as a collective. Do we say blood, sweat, tears, and once in a while, cheers? Is it tears, cheers? So is it tears or is it fears?
Fear.
We realize we don't cry as entrepreneurs. Do you cry?
No.
We don't cry. To be honest, we don't cry. What you do, you go
Suck
to
it up.
bed with fear.
Yeah.
There's a gut feel in your stomach, and you know tomorrow morning, how will it be tomorrow? You don't cry. You don't go and say, hey, it happened. No. You just know, I just hope to sleep, and tomorrow, I hope this fear is not going to exist. So we need to have the courage to come out from that fear and live, because fear is also great. Fear also pushes you beyond your comfort position. As we now start summarizing, I think we're all in our legacy conversations now.
That's true.
For me, I think a big part of why I chose to jump into this bandwagon and drive these kind of conversations is I realized I'm about to turn 50 in a few days. And I was thinking to myself, I've lived more than my future. Yes, and I realized, what am I gonna do? You know, when I was in 7Cs, I said, look, I've helped very many entrepreneurs build businesses. I've helped do great projects that give birth to Huduma centers. Those guys who don't know, it was my idea from scratch. I went and saw Mudhaura with it. I saw Dalmas Otieno. Eventually, it became a Uhuru government project, and they ran with it, which is okay. I say, idea is idea, to end it. Today, it benefits very many people. Is that correct? Yeah. We came back with the health idea, let's digitize healthcare. Now it has become a whole big conversion. It's okay. So long as the idea is taken, somebody runs with it, hopefully, they execute it, the ideas you're coming with. So at some point, you start realizing, it's not about money. It's about impact. How much money can you possibly consume? How much money? You lose money. And you all know, all of you guys have lost money. You realize, surely, they really need this big car. I really need this big house, right? Maybe I need much more, right? And one of the topics we have coming up is your eulogy versus your resume. It's a topic we have coming up. Your resume, which may be today 10, 20 pages, I can imagine yours, Kevin, is 15, 20 pages. God forbid you die. Somebody will summarize it using ChatGPT to 4 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. Say, summarize this guy's CV. The balance of eulogy is going to come from the things you're going to do now. Yes. Is that correct? So this is really, I think, what you call it, our legacy ledgers, right? As individuals. What part of our conversation we're going to talk later. So when you look at your legacy moving forward, as we conclude this, we've talked about trust deficit. We talked about trust as a fundamental bedrock to a lot of things that we do. Correct? We've talked about how trust affects you in your own family settings, in your business settings. I want us to talk about, let's close into your legacy conversation and figuring out if you had to do things to drive your legacy conversation around trust and helping the next generation, what would it be? What would that look like? I know it's a very tough question, but you guys are tough people. So we expect to talk about legacy. This is my legacy project. I want to make sure that when we do this in Africa, where I'm going to do this in Lagos, or do this in North Africa, or do this in South Africa, the conversations are going to change, are going to be different. But what I know, Kenya has a significant level of high-velocity entrepreneurship everywhere we go to. In Ethiopia, it's very different. Ethiopia, either you're a career person or you're a business person. Here, a guy in business, a guy in employment is also a guy in business. Is that correct? It's a very interesting dynamic that we have here. Nigeria is the guy at the top. South Africa has its own dynamics. Is that correct? So you guys, what is your legacy conversation around this?
Wow. Ladies first.
Well, let me think this through a little bit. Go ahead.
I can start because for me, I have 2 thoughts, right? So the first one is I actually don't care about my legacy, right?
That's good.
One, it's because I feel like caring about what people think about me is the problem we have in society. I just want to do what I want to do because it's the right thing to do, right? So my thinking around legacy is, where am I, the decisions that I have been blessed to make and where I've been placed in society. So I'm a father, I am a friend, I am a Kenyan, I am an African, and an entrepreneur. All these different seats I have, how do I make those decisions, and what lens do I focus them through? And that's why I came up with this idea of, let me use the 7th generation principle, so that because I make impactful decisions for my children, for example, right, I have to take it with the seriousness it deserves. Sure. So for me, legacy is less about what do I want to be remembered about. More, it's what do I need to do well, right? And that's what I want to focus on. The second thing is, I have a purpose, and I truly live my purpose. My purpose is, I want to play my role in ensuring Africa is the most modern place on earth by 2050, and especially Kenya. And I do that in 5 ways: being a good father, being a good friend, being a good Kenyan and African, which is 3rd and 4th, and then by building big businesses. And so when we talk about big businesses, my SI unit, or my KPI, that I look at, so I'm 38 right now, right? 2050 is 25 years from now. So the KPI I'm going to judge myself at 2050 is, how many employees do I have that I pay $100,000 equivalent a year? And my target is 1,000. because I want to pay $100 million every month in salaries. Why? Because if you're paying $100 million into an ecosystem, there's going to be supermarkets, there's going to be chemists, there's going to be shops, there's going to be cars, just think about what $100 million buys, right? So for me, that's SI unit. That's my KPI. My second KPI is my bodas. So I liked how you said, right now my average loan size is 2,500. But the big idea with Oye is that how many bodas do we make $1 million millionaires? So that my goal is by 2026, we have 1 million. Right now we have 40,000. By the end of next year, we should have 1 million. There's about 100 million bodas in what they call the Boda belt. And so we can build $1 billion business. And we have a path that we've already proven the model works. So there's going to be savings. And so how do I bring 10% of my bodas to be investors in Oye, but also investors in a savings 100%. Product so that they become dollar millionaires? Because then at that level, we create now what we call a proper middle class, right? Which is what Japan, Korea, Australia, Singapore did, that spend money, right, and buy things and consume that essentially makes us a bigger economy. And now, the modernity, the way I've defined modernity is in 3 ways. So modern is well-being. So one of the things that traveling has shown me is that you could have a very wealthy society, Sweden, Finland, for example, but are these people happy, right? So what is that wellness metric? And I don't have an answer, and I actually challenge audiences when I talk. Can somebody invent for me that wellness metric so that we working on that together? The second is GDP per capita. So the actual money in the pocket, right? That's modernity, right? And then third is how is our environment evolving with us,
100%.
right? Because what we don't want also is all the plastic in the ocean and all the plastic in the water. And we have now obesity, or issues like those. How we making sure that as we become this more wealthy, more prosperous, more high-trust society, that we are moving with the environment in a sustainable way. And that's how I will judge myself in 2050.
And I'm happy you've mentioned you're 38. It's called the benefit of youth. In a way, I look at you as youth a bit, right?
I am youth.
And I love it because, you see, when you have such big, audacious goals, all you can do is go out there and try and make it happen. Is that correct? You don't have a time boundary, right? You can do it, you can fail. They say you can try anything new every 7 years. You can fail every 10 years. They call it 10,000 hours journey. So any 7 years, you could build anything from zero to greatness. So 38, I'm 50 next month. So this is 50 minus 38 is what? 12. Yeah. So you've got 2 cycles.
Yeah.
Me, I've got like 50 to 70 or 80. Maybe I've got how many cycles? Maybe another 4 cycles. So I guess we are together. Let's see how to support each other as you go to this.
And just to conclude.
But amazing. I like the conversation. Yeah, surely.
I also want the audience to know that the big failure usually is at the beginning. After that, let's also be honest. Okay. Yeah. We are comfortable. Right, we can take our kids to good schools, right? We know our school fees. We are members of nice clubs. So the journey of entrepreneurship has a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, yes. But over time,
just cheers.
Yeah, it gets easier. You have better friends. You have more influence, and so it's that first 10 years is
that's it. If you don't go crazy.
Yeah. If you don't go crazy, you have to stay sane. Yeah,
that's also another topic we have coming up. Are you crazy?
Yeah. Crazy or broke?
You can crazy or broke. No, okay.
Or both.
But broke is not a disease.
I keep telling
crazy
people that first one is where you sort of get punched in the nuts.
Yeah.
But after that, you start realizing, always make sure you save a little bit. Always make sure you're building more than just the business, a family. Make sure you're being more engaged in society in a positive way, and that eventually starts adding up.
It's wealth.
Yeah, that's true wealth. So here we are crying we lost 18. Yeah, I did. In fact, 2020 total balance sheet was 150 million. right? And we had to shut down that business. But I'm here, and I'm happy.
Still alive.
Right.
Still alive.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you've
okay.
moved on. You've not
I moved on.
You know, somebody asked me another day. They asked me, Mike, I know I had a valuation business, maybe 60, 50 million. I can't remember 60 million. I don't care anymore. And I told him, what's the valuation? I said, I don't even know of the business. You know, I realized that's just a number.
Yeah.
The balance sheet number. You've lived, you breathe, you're okay, you're walking along. But I don't even think I would be innovating if this had not happened to me.
Yeah.
I would
That's
be
true.
so, I'm happy. Let's go to the club. Let me go and swim a bit. Let me go to Naivasha. Let me enjoy the rally car. Let me do whatever. I don't know, and maybe one of those things would have killed you anyway.
Anyway.
You know. So, Roy.
Yes, I am thinking about legacy. As we had spoken, I told you that when you get to 50, there's a switch that gets into your head where you realize, yes, you've lived more years than you expected to live. So there's an urgency in doing things as you ought to do. So this is where I become a bit dark. And I'll tell you that I actually wrote my obituary. All right? The way I want people to talk about me, not the way ChatGPT will talk about me. And the thing is, I said, this is what I want my wife to say about me. This is what I want my sons individually to say about me, members of my family who outlive me and stuff. And then after saying all those things, I asked myself,
How true.
is it based on a true story? All right? Is it based on a true story?
Is this real?
Is this real? And I am actually thriving to actually be the person that my obituary is actually talking about. And so that's the dark part of what has happened. And I've realized, by the way, there's a whole thing when you realize you're getting to the end, right? When you actually, if you were to line up your the people who are ahead of you, and it's like people stepping off a cliff. And so when the person steps off a cliff, we go bury them, and then everyone has to take a step forward, all right? I realize I may have about 2 other guys in front of me before I'm the one who's now at that particular cliff, but there are those people who are behind me, right? That is a very sobering, for me, at least it's a very sobering thought. But the thing that actually drives me, especially in the creative space, and I have tried to leave, is purpose, as you mentioned, Renee. And I realized one thing, that I'm a Christian, right? And a born-again Christian. I keep telling people the main challenge here, especially with creativity, it's an extension of God's character, right? At the beginning, Genesis chapter 1, the Spirit of God was moving over the water, and he said, let there be light, and there was light. It's creativity. How do our creatives begin? With a blank slate, and then all of a sudden, there's an art piece, there's music, there's fashion, there's something. They create things out of nothing, all right? You look at the book of Exodus 35, I think 35 also, when God was building this temple, and he said, he was talking about Oliab and a guy called Bezalel. He said, I'll pour out my spirit to these guys so that they become more creative. So it's an extension of his character. But the second part is where he said, also give them the ability to teach others, which is basically what we're doing, is giving back of what it is. Entrepreneurs are also creatives. You come up with this brilliant idea, whether it will work or not work, it's what you're putting into it. We are here now teaching others how to follow, what not to do, what to do, and proceeding. So business people are creatives. But I realize one thing, and I say, the one thing that I want to leave is a good name, all right? There's a time I used to say that the next clash in this country will not be about tribes. It will be about class, all right? And if my sons are eventually caught up in a clash like that, and they're caught up in a group and they're told, what's your name? I want them to be able to say, my name is X Gitahi. And the guys will go like, wait, which Gitahi? The guy in the creative space, the guy who was facilitating the creation of jobs and income opportunities for guys. And guys will be like, whoa, wachana na hawa, tunawajua, all right? So give them back their wallet, whatever it is that they're doing, walk along this particular path, no one is going to ask you, all right? But mukifika nyumbani, salimieni muzee, mwambie tuko sawa, ni njaa inatusumbua. You see that kind of thing? The question is, what will your kids say if caught up in that situation? That's the legacy I want to build. A good name. It's not about wealth. It's not building, but it's a good name. And also helping people realize, by the way, you're not alone. Those things that God wants you to have are in you. I'm hoping that Art at Work will be able to take those skills, monetize them. Once they monetize them, go back to He who gave it to you for free, without prayer, without asking for it. He gave it to you by grace, and reconcile yourself with Him. That's our evangelism. That's our ministry. Period. Mumenyamaza sana.
No, it's
Nasikiliza.
yeah, definitely food for
Hata
thought.
mimi kama niko kwa set nasikiliza tu.
We're all learning, yeah.
Renee, hey.
So it's interesting kind of listening to and very inspiring listening to your legacy or how you think about it, and particularly about time. Because my experience as a result of my biology, which could be the experience of very many other entrepreneurs who are women and who have chosen to start a family, or even who have chosen to grow in their careers, is that we paid the punishment early.
That's true.
When we had children, immediately for that 18, 20, 25 years, depending on how many children you have to pay the price then. You have to pay the time price. I'm listening to you almost discussing a legacy of the giving back. For women, we gave the moment the baby popped. And so the price is at that point. And so being at this end where I now have teenagers and young adults, what I have is freedom. A freedom in terms of time and in terms of resource, in terms of demands on my person that I have not had for the last, in my case, 20 years, because that was when I had to raise the children. That was when I had to support the husband and his ideas and his businesses. That was when I had to take the career hit because I went on maternity, or because that was when the divorce happened if I had ideas of how I was going to grow a business as well as try and raise a family. My price, the personal price, is paid in this meat suit at the time when the other half of the population are shooting ahead. And so I have a lot of catching up to do. I have to run very, very quickly with an energy that is different from the energy that I had in my 20s.
That's true.
When I get to 40s, I am looking at menopause, which we still don't want to talk about as a society. We want to operate as though women's greatest values operate in their ovaries only. And that without understanding that the wisdom, the energy, and the fact that I'm not bleeding every month gives me an opportunity to create something that I didn't have before. The only thing is our society tends to close those opportunities because it values that if I cannot produce children, who are the albatross in my business? If I cannot produce children, then I must not be valuable. So that is the first fight at this level. And I'm sure that the women who will be watching this will be going, yo, you shouldn't have said this. This is for us to know, not them to find out. But we decided that we were going to be raw about this. For me now, and those next 22 years, 25 years, 30 years, if God should give me that time and that health, is a time when I create my impact that is greater than the children that I have born and raised, the husband that I have supported, the business that I have helped build, from which I could be thrown out in any moment if he died anyways. So my position so far has been precarious. Now I get to be. So what does being look like for me? And now let me just speak as Renee and not so much as the experience. Well, I think I'm always the gladiator at this point. But let me not speak so much as the experience of women the world over, because we are written off so often
It's incredible if you think of it as a developmental tool, how you write off 50% of the population continuously, give them less to work with, more hindrances, base their worth on things that are very fleeting, and expect to raise the next generation of men through them and a society that will be better, that we hope for. It's an oxymoron. That notwithstanding, and let's put that to the side. In my moment now of freedom, as I look at my children becoming older, my teenagers are now transitioning into university, even into high school. If there was a husband, then he is stable enough, or he has found a coping mechanism that can give me some level of freedom to actually operate as I would. What does this afford me? It affords me a level of courage, if I dare step into it, of opportunity, if I dare to see it and act on it, and a speed to redefine myself, that if I'm courageous in the next 10 years, I actually am insane enough to believe that me and others who look like me can shift the world, actually shift the world. What does that mean? We are the carers. So when I talk about HIV, I'm not just talking about it as a person who is operating and delivering healthcare services. I'm talking about it because I know I'm the one who's going to have to feed this HIV person, care for them, clean them. I'm the one who's going to be, I'm at the battlefront of this problem. We are the ones who do not have as much assets and do not have as much right to assets, even though it's legislated. We don't have as much right to assets as others do. So this is my moment of consolidation. This is the moment of, if I am to care for myself and actually care for my own children, then this is the point when I need to do something about it. So how does that show up in entrepreneurship? It shows up in the urgency that you see in the 40, 45, 50, 55-year-old women who are coming out that is being labeled feminism, but is not. It is the point when we finally, in this ecosystem, we finally stop being mama so-and-so, daughter of this and that because I've been caring for my ailing parents, and I get a chance to just be Renee. Not anything or anyone else. Not wife to, mother to, child of, sister, friend, all of those. I get to be me. And if I've got 10 good years, and because of our lifespan is longer, I may have more than 10 years, then I get to do something. So what is that for me as Renee? I am really clear like you on my purpose. I know exactly why I showed up as in this meat suit, in this experience, in this time. And for me, it's with a particular lens that if I can shift the experience of that 50% that I have just spoken to you about in terms of their most basic needs, then for everyone, including those I have given birth to, those that I'm married to, and those ones that I come from, for everyone, it creates a paradigm shift in the experience of the dignity of being an African. I'm not looking elsewhere. This is the meat suit I came up in. So what does that look like exactly where I am? It is helping those who are the most vulnerable women that I spoke to you about, for them to come out with nothing but the dress on their back, and for them to be able to put a roof over their head, food on the table, and for themselves and for their children and for the parent that they're caring for. It's that they're able to educate that very intelligent child, and indeed all of their children, to be able to get an education that is beyond Form 2, and then the girl child had to be married off or had to spread her legs open so that she could get pads. And most importantly, it's that they get the healthcare that they need, because we all know that nothing tastes as good as health, and no amount of money can give back health. So if we can trap it at the start and reduce the chances of diseases, but if there is disease, then create better outcomes, which means create better life, which means create better opportunity, which means create a better society in this continent, that is written off by so many, Lord, take me. Until then, whoo,
Vita.
2060, tuko pamoja.
Tuehamwe.
Tuehamwe.
And I love your conclusions. Like, it's so vivid as you speak. I feel it. I could feel you as you spoke, and Kevin and Roy, you know. And I think this is why we're here. Is to have the story that we tell, that we inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs, even the current generation of entrepreneurs. Anybody who is in the battlefield needs to hear what you guys are saying. Because sometimes all you need is to hear from somebody you don't know, but at the same time, you want to relate, you want something to ignite your spark. So I'm very happy and very glad you guys made it as the first cohort, or the first people who came to the battlefield. And I am so happy that you guys, you're helping me live my legacy and legacy of many other people. And just hearing you guys talk and knowing that it's going to be a public engagement, it means you're going to be held accountable.
Yes.
You realize that?
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah, you're going to be held accountable.
Yeah. Very aware.
And I'm great to know that you guys know that, right? So together we move forward, and thanks a lot for showing up. And we are definitely going to be having a lot of conversations moving forward. We plan to have over 120 entrepreneurs go through this journey. So imagine how rich this is going to be. Imagine if you do this in Lagos, you do this in South Africa, you do this in Egypt, talking about 500 plus entrepreneurs. Those 500 people will one day be in positions of decision making. Is that correct? Yeah. And if you guys will be able to have the same level of engagement, imagine talking to citizens one day. You're the future leaders. You're the leaders today. But you don't have to be agreed. You don't have to be politically in a position. Everything you do daily is part of you making a better society. So I thank you and welcome to Founders Battlefield. And we really are glad you're here. Asante. To the men in the arena.